Just like that.
I get strong.
This week on Coffee Talk, we're going to talk about how to get strong.
Like the magazine.
Just like that. Use
You
kettlebells. Perfect.
Like, what are you about to do with that? What's going to happen?
Yeah, it's like this. Let me spot your elbow.
Oh, don't do that.
Yeah.
They're
right.
kettlebells, not balls. Kettlebells.
Kettlebells. Yeah, so I'm really excited today because we get to talk about how to get strong. We're not going to get into like deep science on how to get strong, but
Deep science.
Real deep science. We're just going to talk about kind of layman's terms on a proper progression to follow. So if you're starting from scratch, or maybe you've already been strength training for a couple of years and you have some really crappy habits, this is going to be a good place to start. So this is my hierarchy of strength training right here. So we're starting with mobility and flexibility, meaning you can get into the required positions to do certain movements.
Without load.
Without load, right. So just making sure your joints are decently healthy, you have control over your range of motion, you have some amount of flexibility so that you're not, dumping all the weight into a certain area of your body, like your low back, because your shoulders aren't functioning or something like that. So you have a decent amount of mobility and flexibility to perform the movements required. After you've established that, not before you've established that, you're going to get into skilled movement. So learning how to do movements properly. And that could be an air squat, it could be a goblet squat, it could be a push-up. Just basic movements, but getting skilled at them, doing them correctly, right?
Yeah, basic like squat pattern,
Yeah.
deadlift, some type of hip hinge, push and pull, vertical and horizontal. There's a lot of different movements and variations, but just mastering the basic components of those movements.
Yeah, which a lot of people we work with, first off, they don't know how to use their hips. So learning how to do a deadlift, a proper hip hinge, kettlebell swing, that kind of thing. Kettlebell swing, right?
Ballistic.
So we've got mobility and flexibility. We have skilled movement. Once these things are developed, then we work on GPP, which is general physical preparedness. That's basically what CrossFit is. That's the CrossFit fitness regimen, is general physical preparedness, meaning you're capable of doing everyday things. You're kind of ready for anything and everything. You can run, jump, pick something up off the ground, throw something across the room if you need to.
Yeah, be functional and not get injured while doing so.
Right, and the reason I have this here is because we want sort of a balanced body. So you haven't specified your strength yet. You're not focusing on just Olympic lifts before you know how to do a proper squat. So we've developed this physical preparedness, and after you've done all this, if you have intentions of doing powerlifting movements, Olympic weightlifting, you have a sport that you're after, that's where we start to add in specific strength. So that is really a more targeted training after you've developed these kind of basic foundations.
But everyone needs this, whether you're just aiming to live a healthy, functional life, pain-free, able to do things independently for a long time, whether you're training specifically for a sport, whether you're training specifically to improve one lift or the other, whatever your goals are, you have to respect the hierarchy and start with the foundation. And this is probably the least sexy thing to work on, and it takes...
Probably the most important.
It is the most important, but no one wants to do this because it's not fast or flashy or fun. But it is the most important, because if you jump to here or here without focusing on this and making sure that this is there, you will eventually break down. you can get away with some of this stuff for a while until it doesn't work, because you've been compensating or you have imbalances, you've been working around certain things, and you just don't have great joint mobility and integrity. So something will start to break down, and then you'll have to readdress this stuff after it's too late.
Yeah, you end up having to backtrack. So this is something like whether you're getting into a CrossFit or you're just doing general strength training for the first time, don't skip to this just because you want to have a really heavy back squat. That's great, but if you're just in the gym anyways, nobody's really going to be that impressed. Don't skip here if you haven't even touched this stuff, because what's going to happen, like Nicole says, we'll spend 2-3 years doing this, you hurt yourself, and then you have to start over anyways.
Yeah.
So use your time wisely and just kind of progress through that. Now, something that I've talked with a lot of people about lately is like what should be in an effective program. There's a lot of stuff on the internet now, so you can basically just train yourself from the get-go, which this isn't going to be stressed. It's going to be straight to some advanced program. And you're not going to be ready for it if you haven't developed this foundation yet. So these are kind of my general tenets of what should be in a good periodized strength training program. Whether this is targeted for strength or general physical preparedness, kind of going from the top down are some things that we want to focus on. So having consistency, variety, and a progression involved in your program. So this is consistency, just hitting similar movement patterns on a regular basis so that you get good at them. That goes back to the skilled movement.
Right. And it doesn't have to be like consistently like always doing back squats, right? Just some squat variation. So not everyone does well with back squats, whether their mobility and flexibility isn't there yet or just the way that they're built mechanically. Some people are better at front squatting or doing Zercher squats or goblet squats, but the pattern of squatting itself, everyone should be able to do and do consistently.
Yeah, and having variety within that. So like we were talking about with squats, doing overhead squats, doing goblet squats, doing air squats, doing single leg squats.
Right.
Just mixing up how you load it or how you perform it, whether you're doing high rep, low rep, all these different things are providing variety, and that's something that CrossFit is especially great at, is providing you with a variety of kind of the same movement pattern, but you're getting to express it in different ways.
Right.
So it carries over to different skills. And then progression. So over time, your program is progressing you towards a goal.
Right.
1 rep max?
Right.
I don't know. We'll talk about that in a minute.
So what are examples of progression, though?
So progression can be in a lot of things. So if you're just a total beginner, we're big fans of things like 5 sets of 5.
Right.
So let's just use back squat as an example. You do 5 sets of 5 at some moderate weight, sub-maximal loads. So that's, if you knew your percentage, I'm going to say 60%. That's something light. So do 5 sets of 5 of that. And then 5 days later, you do 5 sets of 5 at 65%. And you progress over time doing maybe that same rep scheme, but a little bit more weight over time. That's one progression. There's progressions that use percentages. There's progressions that use just learning a skill and getting better at the skill. So you're getting better over time is what we're after.
So, but even you kind of jump to percentages. I think, and we know in the beginning, while you're developing the skill of the movement and just learning how to get strong, I think percentages are probably the last thing that people need to worry about. Like getting quality reps in, getting strong in different positions of the movement and stuff like that. So 5x5 is just like the perfect example of how anyone can start those main lifts.
Yeah, that's a by feel kind of program.
Right.
So most likely, if you haven't been training for 2 years or more, you probably don't even know your percentages or need to know your percentages.
Yeah.
Because you would have to test a 1 rep max to even know a percentage.
Right.
Most of the time.
And most people don't know how to even approach a 1 rep max within their first couple months of even doing a certain movement.
Right.
They're not good at it yet. They don't even know what that feels like.
If you're putting this in your first 6 months, then you're skipping steps here.
Right.
It's very unlikely that you went from not being trained to hitting a 1 rep max back squats that's accurate.
Yeah. So I guess, how do people perceive if they're not going off percentages, when people are first starting, because we do a lot of 5x5s, we have in our programming, if you've been with us for 6 months or more, you probably have an idea of what a 3-rep max is or whatever. We work off percentages. Our other, more novice, newer lifters, we're going off that 5x5, right? We're just trying to progress based off of like the rep scheme that we did.
Yeah.
So as far as like perceived exertion, how do you explain that to someone? Like if we say, okay, you're doing a 5x5, does it mean that all 5 sets of 5 should be easy versus a 4x8? Like what should it feel like, those reps within each set?
Yeah, I guess it kind of depends on the movement. Usually if we have a lower rep scheme, so like let's say like 6x2, 6 sets of 2 reps. 2 reps should be a lot harder because you're only doing 2.
Right, so it should be heavier.
Right. So, and that's kind of, we'll get into that in a minute, but at this stage, volume is high, meaning we're doing a lot of reps, and intensity, meaning weight or load, is low. And this is like our technique building, pattern building phase. And this should be the main focus of any beginner or intermediates program for a while. Because that's how we're going to build these skill movements. So as far as perceived exertion, I would say usually with people we work with, we're saying like, all right, we're doing a 5x5 for the next 8 weeks. The first 2 to 3 weeks are going to feel kind of easy.
Right.
Because you're just getting better at the movement and you're feeling things out. So your first week, 5x5, should be pretty easy.
Right.
You might be a little winded after your set of 5.
Right.
But you are not struggling at all.
Yeah.
Like
you're in your failure or anything like that.
Yeah, your movement's feeling pretty quick and powerful. You're not grinding out reps.
Right.
So we're going to do that for 2 to 3 weeks. And if it felt too easy, then we're going to go up by this many pounds. But we're going to try to just be consistent. We're going to add 10 pounds a week, something like that.
Yeah.
And then I would expect by week 4, week 5, we start feeling a little more challenged and having to exert a little more power on, your squat, especially sets 4 and 5. Those are going to be tougher this week.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of letting people know. And this is where if you were training yourself, you may not know that.
Right.
So you're just going to jump to what's difficult, but that's not necessarily what's going to help you.
So in the beginning, when you say like novice lifter, that could be your first year of barbell training.
It could be your first 2 years.
I think a lot of people get very frustrated at their lack of progression with some of these bigger movements because, in the beginning when you're learning all this stuff, you'll probably PR every time you touch the bar.
Yeah.
It's all new to you. You're just getting better at the movement, the skill. You're not necessarily getting that much stronger those first couple weeks, couple months even, until you've mastered the skill of it. So don't get frustrated with yourself if you're not continuing to add 5-10 pounds every week on a 5x5, right? You'll get to that point where like the small things start to matter. You'll start to really hone in on some other factors that contribute to more strength and the skill of the movement. But just know like your first year or 2, you're just learning how to get strong.
Yeah, so we're just trying to put in the time, put in the reps. And then you'll see, like we're using 5x5 as an example, but you'll see that weight for your 5x5 increase week over week. And that'll probably go for a while if you're new. At some point it's going to plateau.
Right.
And if you're advanced, we probably wouldn't use that progression. But
moving
submaximal loads is part of that. So submaximal meaning it's not feeling like all-out effort.
Right. You're not going to failure. It's
No.
not like as heavy as you can possibly lift for this set.
Yeah, because 1-rep maxes don't necessarily make you stronger. Those are just an expression of the work you've been putting in here.
Right.
This is the result, not
How you
the
train.
not the means to get there.
Right.
So this phase is where most people should be for a while. Now, put a star next to scheduled deloads. A lot of people don't do this, and I think it's a huge error in your programming.
Right.
Even if you're feeling pretty good, if you've put in 4 or 5 weeks of steady progression and you've been training 3 to 5 times a week pretty intensely, you need a scheduled deload. And what that is basically just a week where you can still exercise, you can still do your movements, but you're just backing off the intensity.
Right.
And I've talked to people before where, they spent weeks and weeks going to maximum, not ever doing this. And they wonder why they were plateauing.
Yeah, or they get tired, or they start to get sick a lot, or they're feeling sluggish, they're not as fast,
Right.
they're sore way more than they should be.
Yeah.
It's because you need to rest.
Exactly.
Your training is only as effective as your ability to recover from it.
Right.
And so
So you
week
need to
after
recover,
week,
you need to adapt to your training. that's how you get stronger.
Right.
You push it, you push it, you push it, you back off, you let your body recover, and then you can continue to handle that.
Sure.
But if you're in your first year of training and you're hitting plateaus, then you are not doing something right.
Right.
And it's probably you're not doing these scheduled deloads. So what I would say is, like, just as an example, if you've been doing back squat and deadlift and strict press,
Right.
and you do that every week for 4 weeks, things have been going pretty good, numbers keep going up. At the end of that 4 weeks, put in a 1 week deload where you back everything off to 50%. You could even do twice as many reps as you normally do, but
Yeah.
you go light, 50 to 60%.
Yeah, you're still moving.
Yeah,
You're
you're
still
still
getting that
moving.
movement in.
You're keeping that going.
Right.
And again, that goes back to skilled movement. Like, we're constantly harping on the fundamentals. That's going to allow you to get stronger in those lifts because you're doing them correctly. So scheduled deload. So this, if you learned anything today, it's these 4 things should be part of your program. Now, as you get deeper into a given program, and I'm talking like a 2 to 3 month phase, in that last month somewhere, probably last 4 weeks, 6 weeks, volume is going down, so we're lifting less reps, less sets,
Right.
and your weights are going up. So this is where we start to kind of get into this adaptation mode where we built the foundation. Now we're going to push it a little bit
Right.
and force a little adaptation through our body, both through like muscles,
Right.
but also through your nervous system and things like that.
Food, sleep.
Yeah, we're not even getting into nutrition today,
Yeah.
but we've done that before. So this is just focused on training, but we've decreased the volume. Our intensity is going up. We're forcing some adaptation. We're working towards peaking, and this is where you can test. So if you want to test a 1 rep max, you've put in all the work. You've gone. Before you do this, you're probably going to deload. You're going to peak, and you're going to see what all that work was for.
Yeah. This is called periodization.
Yeah.
That's a big one. And a lot of CrossFitters aren't familiar with this because it's all about intensity all the time. I think that the one flaw in the CrossFit model that people kind of exaggerate or run with is constantly varied at high intensity. I think it needs to be varied intensity. Your intensity needs to vary in order to keep going, to keep training, to continue to get stronger without getting injured, hitting that wall constantly, overdoing it. Like this, CrossFit and all these things, strength training and being in the gym should all contribute to making you better, making you healthier, making you more able-bodied throughout life. Yes, injuries can happen here and there, but you shouldn't be constantly beating yourself up.
Yeah.
And the sport side of things, you're competing in a specific sport, of course that has a little more risk, and we're not talking about that. We're talking about just GPP, right? Just looking to get fit, to get strong, improve your body composition, just to build on your basic strengths. Like, these things need to happen. And if you look back at your workouts and your programming, whatever program you follow or gym, and you're like, man, we test our 1 rep max like every week. We're always doing like.
Yeah, it's like if you're always lifting, you're always just going to max.
That's a problem.
Yeah, when do you get better with your technique? When do you get better with your skills?
Right. And it's hard for people because they want to go hard all the time. A lot of people have this thing where if they're not on the floor sweaty, if they're not totally out of breath, if they're not super sore every day, they feel like their workouts aren't effective. And that's not true at all. There's a time and a place for that type of intensity where, yes, we're going to push it. We want your heart rate to get way up. We want you to get sore. We want you to go close to failure and fatigue. But that's a very specific periodized time where we peak, we test those things, we go back to consistency, moving submaximal loads, recovering from that. Yeah. It cannot be.
This is a cycle. Like, this is a cyclical thing.
Right.
When you get to the peak, when I say repeat, I mean you go back down to this.
Right.
And you go through it again.
Yeah.
And that's something like rest is just as important as the work you're doing in the gym.
Right.
And that goes to Nicole's point of like trying to just go to that maximum all the time.
Yeah, I need more volume, I need more workouts, I need more. It's like, no, you need quality.
And then if you're,
what about this?
And if you wonder why you blew your back out,
yeah.
Well, how much time were you spending here versus how much time were you spending here?
Right.
If you're just constantly pushing the intensity,
right.
it's not
This is
necessarily making you
exciting.
stronger.
This is exciting
It
and
is.
fun, and I know that. But
This doesn't go on
you
Instagram.
You can't have these often when you don't do this.
Yeah.
This will start to go down the shitter pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So a lot of people ask, like, what are your 1 rep maxes? Honestly, I don't know. Like, for some of my lifts, I don't know. I don't test them very often. I'll test my 1 rep max maybe 4 times a year or so.
So like, let's talk about that, because for most people, we're talking about mainly the general public, the general exerciser, like somebody that they want to be stronger in life and they want to stay healthy.
Yeah.
This doesn't really do much for you.
Right.
It's fun and it's sexy, and I think you deserve it every once in a while.
Sure.
But if you're just your kind of average exerciser, strength trainer, this only needs to happen once or twice a year.
Yeah. So aside from that, how do you know you're getting stronger and improving? Well, either the load goes up on the bar on the same rep scheme, or vice versa. The load stays the same, but the reps go up. Like, there are other ways to determine your strength and your progression.
Yeah, or how's that
outside.
video look of you doing a clean 6 months ago versus you doing that same weight 6 months later? It looks way easier and way more technically sound versus the one that you struggled and just kind of like barely got through.
Yeah.
That is progression too. Like that's a huge part of it.
Yeah, and I think that for a lot of us coaches that have an understanding of this and have great intentions in mind for our athletes and for our members, we want them to continue to do all this stuff for life. We have to have the know-how and the confidence to back people away from this and get them back to here and get them to focus on this. Because if we don't, we know what will happen.
Yeah, and at some point we're kind of jumping back and forth in this pyramid.
Yeah.
Especially with group training programs, like we're mixing in this, and this today.
Right.
But there needs to be lots of time spent going up that pyramid first.
Right. Yeah. And with our, with CrossFit, they're typically 1 hour classes, they're group classes. So there's only so much that we can do as coaches within that 1 hour. Right. So that's why it's your responsibility to make sure that you're making this a priority outside of that 1 hour window.
Yeah.
But to understand that when we ask people to back off the load, right, back off the intensity, and just to go down to maybe like an empty barbell or perhaps dumbbells or kettlebell, whatever it is, maybe regress the movement to a less advanced variation, it's because this needs to happen, and we don't want you to get injured. Yeah, something got skipped.
And that's, just not wasting your time training.
Right.
We've taken so many people that they've been training for years and years and years, and we have to re-engineer their lifts and all that kind of stuff. And it can be really rewarding for those people that will put in the work and just accept that, like, all right, I got to take a step back here.
But it's so much harder to undo all those habits than to start correctly.
And the bottom line is strength is a skill.
Yeah.
Like, it is. And I think gymnastics is like the perfect example of it. Kids that go into gymnastics young and grow up in gymnastics, like, that's how they get great at gymnastics, because they spend a lot of time. If you're 25 and you start doing gymnastics, you've got a long learning curve ahead of you. So, like,
I still remember stuff when I was a kid in gymnastics.
Yeah, because you've got 6-year-olds that are doing rope climbs, they're doing hollow holds, they're conditioning their core and their body and every little tendon and all that kind of stuff. That is the foundation. That is this stuff. And then they get into specific strength, how they get better on the rings or the parallel bars or whatever.
Right.
Because they put in that time.
Yeah.
Mostly as a young kid. So
if you have to load up a barbell to get your squat to a certain movement, like, we see this all the time, like, no, I just need to be a little heavier. I'm like, if your air squat looks painful like this, but then you have to load up the bar to force yourself into position, that's a problem.
Yeah, we see that all the time with the Olympic lifts. We're like, my front rack's terrible. I can do a front squat, but I got to load it up to like 220 first, and then I can get my elbows up. It's like, well, if you bend it enough, you'll get back there. But
what's compensating now? Like, what else is hurting because of that?
Right, you're just shifting that somewhere else. So, just kind of pay attention to these progressions. Does your program have this in it? Are you a novice lifter and you're trying to do the most advanced program out there?
Yeah.
Did you just learn how to squat and you want to do small up?
Oh, that's the most annoying thing.
I'm thinking about doing small
Everyone's like,
up.
I want to get my back squat up. Do small. I'm like, that is the most advanced program.
Just back squat twice a week. Eat,
do
rest.
some lunges
you'll
and
be
split
okay.
squats. You'll be fine.
Yeah. So, again, this section, super important. You could spend lots and lots of time.
Yeah.
Throughout your training career here to build things up.
No, so it should be scheduled, right? That's the importance of following a program, because a lot of times you won't feel like you need this deload.
Right.
Like, you'll be feeling well because you followed this. You shouldn't feel too beat up. So sometimes you're like, well, I don't need a deload. I
No, I'm
feel
gonna do
good.
this.
You know, like nope, it's not time yet. It's not
Yeah.
time yet.
Yeah,
But
so-
if you're following a program,
Almost any
Do it.
program that you're doing, if you're doing 4 to 5 days a week,
yeah,
every 3 to 5 weeks, this needs to be there.
right.
So if you want to make it easy, train for 4, take 1 off.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean don't
Pretty
do
simple.
anything. It doesn't mean don't lift, don't exercise.
Yeah.
Movement's important. You're just lowering the intensity. You're not going
Yeah,
acid.
and deload week can be kind of fun. You can do stuff that you don't normally do.
Right. Yeah.
You can
just
do a lot of body weight movements. You can do real light variations of the movements you
Uh-huh.
already do.
Mhm.
But just make it fun, like switch
Yeah.
it up, give
Right.
your body some rest, and I guarantee you will come back from that and be feeling stronger, feeling better,
Right.
sharper, faster, all that stuff.
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's how we're so strong. I rest a lot.
Take a lot of rest.
No, but it's true. I think that a lot of people, they see us at the gym and they see how strong we are and how kind of advanced we are, but we've been doing this for years, and I think a lot of people have a misunderstanding of how long this stuff takes and kind of how much we spent building these foundations. I've spent years getting strong, and it takes a while to develop strength, but once you have that foundational stuff, if you've taken the time to build it correctly, you don't lose it very easily, right? Assuming that you took all the proper steps. So just be patient, and I can take some time off and still maintain a lot of my strength because I've spent so many years doing this stuff, because my movement is sound. Like, my flexibility, mobility is there. I take care of that stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't go the backwards way. So yeah, if you want to get strong as fuck,
Do
you
it the
need
right
to
way.
be consistent, deload, rest, adapt, and come back through the circle.
Yep.
All right.
That's it for this week's Coffee Talk. Subscribe to Elevate St. Pete on YouTube, and we got lots of new videos on there. We got
Yeah.
a bunch of stuff, new weightlifting library if you want to check out some movement demos for specific weightlifting stuff. But otherwise, leave us your comments, your emails, your feedback, and we'll see you next week.